urban area,
but urban area, you got to have a full-time, dedicated, on the job, be there when you have to need them. And we have one of the finest fire departments of any in America.
Mr. Mayor, we have another question for our studio audience. Good evening, ma'am. Would you state your name and your question, please?
Good evening, Mayor. My name is Ilona Evans McNeil. Recently, you and other mayors have been talking about decriminalizing drugs. Do you see in the next 5 years a society, and particularly a city, in which the government will do that, in which private industry or the government will take over the sale of drugs so that drug addicts can go and purchase their drugs for 25, 50 cents? A city in which our young people will no longer be employed into the ranks of selling drugs because there will no longer be a profit in it. Do you see that in the next decade?
Well, I get the impression, and Mayor Schmoke can speak for himself, but what we're facing here in America is a drug epidemic, where there are about 6 countries that produce 95% of all the cocaine that comes into America, and then there are about 5 or 6 countries in Indochina that produces all the heroin that comes here. It's a $150 billion cash and carry business. No credit cards, all cash and carry. We also find that in 1988 there's 15 to 20% more drugs on the streets of America than there was in 1987. Now, notwithstanding the fact that here in Washington we've arrested some 33,000 people, 14,000 of whom are for drug-related charges. So, Ms. McNeil, as you look at our so-called war, I'm not sure we ever started a war, but whatever we started, we're losing it. It's hard for me to convince a young person to go to work for $3.35 an hour when they can make $50. And so I've come to a point where I want to debate on this. I'm not saying whether we ought to decriminalize or legalize, but at least ought to be full debate on what our options are. How do we take the profits out of this war? We've had 127 deaths in Washington since January 1st.
Well, that's exactly what Mayor Schmoke is calling for, is a national debate.
70% of those are drug-related, and we cannot put our heads in the sand, act like it doesn't exist. We have to at least talk about what our options are. In a democratic society, we're intelligent, we're bright enough, we're strong enough to stand any kind of debate, and then look at the ups and downsides. If it looks like the downside is worse than the upside, you go down. You don't do it. But what I can say this: most of us mayors are vitally concerned that we're about to lose several generations of people, not just young people either, because ball players and athletes can't consume $150 billion worth of dope.
Mr. Mayor, as you can certainly understand, Mayor Schmoke in Baltimore is more than anxious to jump in here. So let's go back to let's go back.
He started this debate, and I appreciate his leadership on it. It was a bold move on his part.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor Barry. I'm not going to go into it in great detail. One thing that I'm pleased to announce, though, is the fact that since this debate started in earnest a few weeks ago, Congressman Rangel has now agreed to hold those hearings that I have proposed, that is to have this national debate, public hearings, and he would like to do it in Baltimore at a federal facility here, but he may do it in Washington. It'll be either the end of September or October 3rd. We will have these hearings where we can bring national and international experts and bring citizens in to talk about it. And I guess the most important thing that I've tried to say to people is that I'm not calling for a retreat in the war against drugs. I just want to fight the battle on the battlefield that drug dealers understand, and that's money. They don't want to make ours a nation of zombies. They just want to continue to make billions and billions of profit. And the engine that's driving all this crime in our community is the profit to be made in drugs. And so I think the best thing that we can do for our children is to put drug dealers out of business. And we're not doing it by just getting tough, because that just inflates the price of the drugs. It means more people have to break into more homes and shoot more folks. But if we go at this business by taking the profit out, I think we'll make a substantial contribution. And I just remind people, when they think back to Prohibition, and I know that none of us were around at that time, but as you think back to it and you remember all the crime associated with the trafficking in alcohol, what destroyed the mob and the gangsters and helped end the corruption related to the trafficking in alcohol was not J. Edgar Hoover, it was not the FBI, it was ending prohibition. That took the profit out of it. It deflated the market, and it helped improve the quality of life in our cities. So let's debate it at least.
Let's to show you how things have gotten. Peru produces about 50% of all the cocaine in America. The American government worked with the government of Peru to do a spraying with herbicides. And here's a major American corporation, Eli Lilly, had agreed initially to sell the herbicide. They don't want to produce it, and all of a sudden they got chicken. They backed off of it. They will not sell that product, so we can go and spray in that valley over there and kill those cocoa leaves. That shows how powerful the drug dealers are. In my view, Eli Lilly is just as guilty of contributing to this problem as a major cartel in Colombia or Peru or Brazil or Paraguay or Mexico or wherever they are. That's how vicious the situation is.
Can this problem be corrected? Can you take the profit out of drugs? Can you take the money away from drug
We don't
dealers
know, Paul.
without it, if not legalizing, certainly nationalizing drugs? Can it be done without?
We don't know. Nobody's ever dared raise the question as to what our options are. You know, we arrested somebody just last week with 29 pounds of cocaine at Union Station. About 2 weeks ago, another 29 pounds. This is about $4 million that we caught.
And Mayor Barry, just to add to that tragedy, over here we arrested last week an 8-year-old with 14 bags of cocaine assisting an older drug dealer. So our community is really maybe triply victimized. We've got high addiction rates, high crime rates, and drug dealing is an employment option for our children, and that's just wrong.
Mayor Schmoke, do you see the day when the drug problem in Baltimore, and there are random killings, no doubt, concerning drugs. It seems to me that in Washington they may have a little bit more serious problem if there are actually gang wars over drugs. Do you see our society in Baltimore heading that way, into that serious a problem?
Well, it's a very serious problem. I hope we don't get the gang problem, but we have a similar problem that Mayor Barry described about the incarceration rates. We've got a jail here designed to hold 2,100 people, and we've got 2,650 in. A state prison system designed to hold 9,500 that's got 14,000 in there, and the drugs keep coming because we cannot prosecute our way out of this problem.